This is CBC Nova Scotia News.
Tonight, homeless encampments. Halifax approves the use of 9 parks as the number of people sleeping rough continues to climb. A former St. Mary's University groundskeeper who was convicted of sexually assaulting 3 women gets full parole. And water warning. A growing number of beachgoers are being swept out to sea on pool inflatables.
Well, the heat warnings are going to come to an end, but the rain is on the way. I'll let you know when to expect it and how much coming up.
Good evening. As the number of people sleeping rough continues to climb, Halifax will be opening more designated homeless encampments. Councillors have approved 9 parks that can be used as needed, and the city says the current camps have been overcrowded for too long. Our Haley Ryan has tonight's top story.
This piece of green space by the Oval will soon be a designated site for people to set up tents.
But what I like to see is officers on bikes, just to show that, people safe, because you got families who come here.
This is a nice big flat area.
Yeah.
I think as long as they're behaving, for a lack of a better word, let them do it.
It's among the 9 park spaces councillors approved yesterday.
What do you even say, right? Like, we should not even be in this situation of what an awful choice. Our choice right now is which of our public spaces are we going to give up.
The most recent numbers say about 150 people are sleeping rough in Halifax, with just over half of those staying in the 4 current encampments. The city says those sites have been overcrowded for too long, and opening up more space, like here at the Common, gives people somewhere else to go.
If we don't designate it, then we will just allow tents to be on all the Common, where we can at least try to centralize it in one area.
Designated sites come with porta potties, water, and garbage removal. Besides the Common, the first round of sites to open will include Cogswell Park on Windsor Street, where there are already tents, and this space on Glebe Street in the North End.
This would be a small pressure relief, but if we continue to see the increase in numbers of those that are sleeping rough, and those that are going to be doing that through in a tent or an encampment, we will be looking for additional spaces.
With these sites, the city can now move people out of areas they say aren't ideal. Those in front of the old Memorial Library have to leave by next week. They will also move 13 people living in Dartmouth's Northbrook Park, where there have been violent incidents and altercations with neighbors.
The low-income daycare, they can't take the kids there anymore. The park has been lost.
The city is also working to clear the land for a larger tent site on Wrights Cove in Dartmouth, but that won't be ready until mid-September at the earliest. Many councillors noted that housing and homelessness remains a provincial issue. The province does have new teams offering mental health support to people in camps. More pallet shelters and a tiny home village in Lower Sackville are also expected this fall, but until then, the encampments will stay. Haley Ryan, CBC News, Halifax.
A Halifax man who was convicted of sexually assaulting 3 women has been granted full parole after completing day parole. Matthew Percy is serving a sentence of 7 years. The former groundskeeper at St. Mary's University was convicted of assaults going back to 2013. Since then, the parole board says he's taken responsibility for his actions and completed a rehabilitation program, psychological counseling, and attended Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. He's also holding down a job. Conditions of his release including no contact with his victims or their families, as well as avoiding alcohol and reporting all new relationships with women. A search is underway tonight for a missing Cape Breton man. Police say they found the man's car, but his whereabouts remain a mystery. The CBC's Kyle Moore has the details.
I'm here on Ormond Crescent, which is just off the Louisbourg Highway, a few minutes outside of Sydney. It's where police and search teams are looking for a 34-year-old man from North Sydney. By air and ground, search teams from across Cape Breton are looking for Justin McDonald. Police say they received a call about the missing man from North Sydney on Monday. His car, a 2023 Kia Forte, was found in Ormond Crescent, about a half an hour from where he's from. According to one resident who lives nearby, he says he noticed a burnt-out car being towed from the area police are currently searching. We asked police today about the condition of the vehicle when it was found.
I will not confirm nor deny how the car was found, but what I can tell you is we have major crime unit involved, as well as our forensic identification, and patrols are involved as well.
McDonald is described as 5'9", 240 pounds, with sandy blonde hair and green eyes. His picture has been widely shared throughout social media, with family eager to hear from him. Inspector Ken O'Neill says the family is having a difficult time.
And my understanding from speaking to our team members, they're very distraught, they're very concerned, as are we, and we will continue with the investigation to try to get a resolve for the family.
Police say anyone with information on Justin McDonald can contact their non-emergency number or anonymously through Nova Scotia Crime Stoppers. Kyle Moore, CBC News, Sydney.
Nova Scotia is following the lead of other provinces and will be changing the way it tests for cervical cancer. British Columbia and PEI have already switched from Pap tests to HPV screening. Studies have shown the HPV testing is more accurate and can be done at home rather than a doctor's office. It will take more than 2 years to roll out the at-home testing in Nova Scotia.
The important thing about them is to get it done. They're very similar in their results, and we know the biggest problem, like most cancer screening in Nova Scotia, is people not taking advantage of the test and having it done regularly. So I'd say to women, it's coming. Make sure you keep your testing up to date. If you haven't had a Pap test within 3 years and you have a cervix, you should have a Pap test done.
The Canadian Cancer Society says at-home testing will increase access to vital screening, especially since many Nova Scotians don't have access to a family doctor.
We've heard that our sexual health clinics, our walk-in clinics, and other healthcare providers are being challenged with offering Pap tests to current patients that are unattached. And so having the switch from Pap tests to HPV testing, and specifically self-sampling, will help alleviate that burden on our primary healthcare system and put more tools directly in the hands of Nova Scotians.
And I'll talk to Heather Mulligan with the Canadian Cancer Society about what she thinks about the 2-year timeline for those tests to be rolled out in Nova Scotia. That's our newsmaker just after 6:30. Well, Tina, I took a quick walk, and when I opened the doors to go outside from our building, you just got hit with that wall of heat and humidity.
Absolutely. You really appreciate the air conditioning when you walk into that wall. And, some of us have been seeing those scattered showers developing into the afternoon, and at times they provide a little bit of relief, but after the showers are done, it feels more like a steam bath, and it certainly feels like that today. The humidity is up. The temperatures are up as well. Most of the temperatures are coming into the mid to upper 20s. We've seen a few 30-degree temperature readings, and with the humidex, it feels like temperatures were in the upper 30s to lower 40s in some areas. And if you wanted some cool relief, other than the air conditioning, you could have gone to some of the coastal communities. Some were seeing the temperatures this afternoon in the teens. The humidity, once again, that dew point temperature, which measures how much moisture is in the atmosphere, it's still sitting in the upper teens to lower 20s. So it does feel very, very humid out there, and in some areas oppressive. Now, to our north, we do have some rainfall warnings that are in effect for New Brunswick. So we do have a system on the way, and it will bring widespread rain to Nova Scotia. In fact, in some areas, we could see some heavy amounts of rain. We also have risks of thunderstorms as this system pushes its way through. So tomorrow is going to get a little bit more cloudy. That will hold the temperatures back, so it's not going to be as warm tomorrow. So there is some relief in that. However, once the rain is done with us, which I think is going to happen on Friday morning, the heat is going to get turned back on. So the relief is on the way, but not for very long. We'll have more on the extended forecast coming up.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Tina. Well, Marine Atlantic's newest ferry departed from North Sydney for Argentia earlier today, but it's not all smooth sailing ahead. This marks the official launch of the Alisuanu, which has been delayed multiple times due to mechanical issues. Upwards of 7,000 passengers were affected by those cancellations, which saw people rerouted to Port aux Basques, 850 kilometers away from Argentia. Today, Marine Atlantic announced more cancellations for next week on the 17th and 18th of July. Anyone traveling on those days will be rerouted through the Gulf service to Port aux Basques. That is because Marine staff need 2 more days to complete necessary training on the new vessel. The North End Community Health Center held an event in Halifax today focusing on food insecurity. The free conference for community members looked at how to create food sovereignty and sustainability in African, Nova Scotian, and Indigenous communities. The event included a panel of people who've lived through food insecurity. Terry Barton was one of them. He spoke about what it feels like to go without food.
I remember potatoes were the only thing that we had in the house, you know, for weeks upon end. And, you know, although you don't want to eat the same thing every day, it was enough to get us through. You know what I mean? So, you know, whether you have a whole lot or whether you have a little, you know, survival is important, and food is a part of survival.
The event also featured what community organizations are doing to combat food insecurity. It's been 2 years since vandals stripped bark from over 24 trees at the Halifax Public Gardens in an apparent attempt to kill them. One of the trees is estimated to be 250 years old. The CBC's Vernon Ramasar was at the gardens today to find out how the damaged trees are faring.
I'm here with Stan Kochinoff, who's a registered consulting arborist. Stan, can you tell me what happened here 2 years ago and how many trees were affected?
There was around 32, 34. They're not quite sure, but there were some smaller ones that were taken out immediately. But when I came here, we were dealing with about 27 trees.
Okay, and what was done to these trees, and what kind of effect would that have had on them?
Well, they were bark girdled, basically, just taking an axe or a machete and going around and girdling the tree where you actually expose all the bark. And they did this on a number of trees. There was a few that was very, very little done, and there were some trees that were really done with something like this one back here that was amazing that it survived even 2 years.
What kind of effect can a girdling have on a tree?
Well, it stops the flow of nutrients and water going up to the tree to feed the branches.
And having sort of encountered this, what was done to help the trees after this event?
Well, we spent some time during the civic holiday there with the public garden staff doing what we call wound tracing or bark tracing, where we smooth out the bark and try to get a smooth transition so that the tree can heal faster. And then they were putting a lot of water to them, and I think they were deep injected fertilizer at one time, and I think they're going to do them again.
Is this something that happens fairly frequently, that people would know what to do, or is it a very unusual occurrence?
Very unusual occurrence. I checked with my associates in the States, and no one had ever heard of such widespread vandalism. You know, some people have girdled one tree to get rid of it because they didn't like the tree that was facing their neighbor or something, but other than that, no, nothing like this.
Well, it's 2 years on now. What is the prognosis for the trees that were vandalized, and are all of them going to survive?
Well, I have a good feeling they will, but we'll know better in the third year. We've lost 2 for sure, maybe 3 this year, like this one here and the birch over there. But I'm very optimistic that most of them will survive.
Including one that is especially important because it's a very old tree. You were telling me about it a short while ago. 250 years old, I understand?
Yeah, that's the European weeping birch over by the fountain.
And why is 3 years so important?
Well, by that time the reserves of the tree that would have been there would be exhausted, and there's no way they can pull up any more. So then if they can't get the nutrients and water, the tree's going to die.
Now, it's been 2 years, a reward was put out. Nobody's been caught for this action, I assume perpetrator or perpetrators. What kind of person would have done something like this? And also, are there any special skills they would have had to know about to perform something like this?
Well, they certainly knew what they were doing. and they knew which trees would probably be the best ones to attack. But they must have had some experience knowing how to kill a tree. But I don't know what kind of a person would do it, or whether somebody has a mat on with HRM or a former disgruntled employee. Who knows? But I don't know if we'll ever know unless somebody's bragging about it in a bar somewhere.
You've spent 50 years as an arborist. It must have been painful for you to see this 2 years ago.
Oh, so much. This is really, I'm just hoping we can save most of the trees. And in this special place, it's kind of the jewel of Halifax.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Stan, as you look now and think, hopefully most of these trees will survive, but obviously a couple like the one behind us are going to go?
Well, they're going to require a little more tender, loving care. In other words, more water and fertilizer injection to help, the regrowth better. But I think if they practice that we should be successful.
All right, Stan, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
There's some good news tonight about the entangled North Atlantic right whale spotted in the St. Lawrence estuary. Rescuers have freed the 1.5-year-old that had been tangled in fishing gear for 2 weeks. A team of rescuers with the Canadian Whale Institute spent the day on the water to disentangle it. Rescuers say only a segment of rope remains around one of its pectoral fins, but they say with the work done today, they hope the gear will fall off on its own. This comes after several failed attempts to free the young whale over the past few weeks. It was initially spotted in New Brunswick on June 22nd. The team has put a tracker on the whale to be able to follow its movements. Well, here's a cautionary tale for anyone at the beaches in the Maritimes this summer. Parks Canada says it's concerned about people being swept out to sea on pool inflatables. In PEI, it now adds up to more than half of their rescues, and officials are worried the issue will remain a problem. Connor Lamont has more.
Parks Canada staff say they have their hands full these days. It often has to rescue people on pool floaties in open water. So much so that staff say the problem is a hot topic.
This is a pretty big issue. We see quite a few rescues. Over half of our rescues are actually due to inflatables. And we've seen anything from a giant unicorn to air mattresses that you would use camping to sleep on.
Casey says the issue is getting worse and that people misjudge how quickly the weather can change around PEI, causing them to get swept out to sea very quickly. The Canadian Coast Guard also rescues many people on inflatables and strongly recommends people do not use them on open water.
The main thing that we want people to know is that these are meant for the pool, that controlled environment where you're not going to be swept super far out. These pool floaties are not meant to be used in open water, particularly because when you're operating in open water, wind and weather and currents can change very quickly.
Jenner says it can be very difficult for people to swim back on their own. Parks Canada and the Coast Guard say they are prepared for any rescue. But Casey says these types of calls draw surf guards away from protecting beaches, and it may require sending rescue workers into deeper and more dangerous waters.
Historically, we've had quite long swims and paddles to try and get these people back. So you're taking that surf guard not only out of their supervised zone, but quite a ways out to sea to get these people back.
Casey says surf guards will always go out and rescue people and suggests beachgoers check out the Parks Canada Facebook page and website for more information. Parks Canada and the Coast Guard also agree that it's best to leave the inflatables at home. Connor Lamont, CBC News, Delve Beach.
Coming up, NATO leaders meet in Washington to shore up support for Ukraine in its battle against Russia. And health officials in Ontario confirm 9 cases of listeriosis related to recalled non-dairy milks. It is a lovely summer night out there, and Tina's back next with her full forecast. We'll see you in just a few minutes. Yeah, so you're talking about some rain coming. Can you just imagine what the lawns are going to be like once this week is over?
Thank you.
The heat and the rain, they'll be grown pretty high.
I think so. If you haven't mowed it today, we've got some mowing to do as we head into the weekend. But, you know, even though we do have rain coming in, I think tomorrow for Nova Scotia, the heaviest of rain is going to come in tomorrow evening into the wee hours on Friday morning. And then I do think it's going to be tapering off. But those rain showers are going to stay in and out of the forecast for the entire weekend. Not a complete washout, but something to keep an eye on. If
Move around and avoid them.
Yeah, there you go. Have a plan B or C.
Exactly.
But in the meantime, plan B or C to get into the air conditioning if you had outdoor activities, strenuous outdoor activities today, especially inland. Again, those temperatures rising into the upper 20s to lower 30s, even still seeing 30 degrees right now through parts of the valley towards Keji, 29 in Greenwood. We have 26 in Halifax. Areas along the coast where we get that southwesterly wind and some fog patches that were a little bit stubborn, those temperatures held into the teens. That's where we can get some relief too. 14 degrees in Western Head, but it's 28 degrees in Sydney. And all in all, a very summertime pattern has set up. The humidity is here as well whenever you're talking about those dew point temperatures, which we track. When they get up into the upper teens to lower 20s, we're talking about humid and oppressive. And we had Humidex values this afternoon coming in into the mid 30s to near 40 degrees. So it felt like that this afternoon. Now there are rainfall warnings in place for New Brunswick, not so much for Nova Scotia just yet, but that's based on the track of this area of low pressure that's coming in. And most of the rain that's going to fall, at least in the next 12 hours, is going to fall across New Brunswick. In fact, there's a swath of some heavy rain now pushing its way into northern New Brunswick. And look at these thunderstorms in Maine. They're pushing their way eastward as well. So we've got rain coming. A few spotty showers showing up on the radar from time to time, and I do think that we will see at least chances for showers as we go into the evening hours, but it's all in part of an area of low pressure that's actually pulled in the remnants of Parole, and that's going to enhance some of the rainfall totals. So for tonight, do expect a shower or two. Don't be surprised to see that. But again, the heaviest of rain is expected tomorrow evening into the wee hours Friday morning. But between now and then, we have chances for showers in the forecast, and I wouldn't rule out an isolated thunderstorm tomorrow afternoon. As we go through time, you can kind of see what's happening here. So the rain's coming in from north to south, the heaviest of rain anyway, and it will sink eventually into the province. The swath of that heavy rain looks to be in central New Brunswick, stretching into PEI and into Cape Breton, especially Inverness and Victoria County. But again, we all have chances for rain, even some thunderstorms thrown in that forecast, and that will add rainfall totals into the rainfall amounts as well. So where we see those thunderstorms setting up shop, they will put down locally heavier amounts of rain. And then we get into a kind of a summertime pattern. Once again, southwesterly winds, clouds in and out of our skies for the weekend, and chances for showers. In the meantime, because of the cloud cover tomorrow, the temperature should hold into the mid to lower 20s for most, but rain and thunderstorms in the forecast for tomorrow afternoon, and the rain will be heavy at times Thursday night into Friday, and then chances for showers for the weekend.
And the warm weather continues, though.
And it does.
All right, thanks, Tina.
You're welcome.
Up next, I'll talk with Heather Mulligan with the Canadian Cancer Society, and I'll ask about Nova Scotia's plans to change the way it tests for cervical cancer. That's our newsmaker. Stay with us. You're watching CBC Nova Scotia News. Nova Scotia is looking to do what BC and PEI have already done, change the way the province screens for cervical cancer. The medical director for the program in Nova Scotia told a legislature committee this week that it'll take at least 2 years to switch over to HPV testing from Pap tests. For reaction to this, we've reached Heather Mulligan, Atlantic Canada Advocacy Manager with the Canadian Cancer Society. So first off, your thoughts on Nova Scotia talking about changing the way it screens for cervical cancer. Why is this better?
It's very important. We know that we can eliminate cervical cancer in Canada. It is, very often, the thing that we can surprise ourselves by saying is we can eliminate a cancer. And so what we've been seeing is in recent years, specifically between 2015 and 2019, an increase in cervical cancer rates nationwide, about 3.7%. And this is due to a combination of factors, including higher levels of transmission, lower vaccination rates, and barriers to screening. And so HPV, or human papillomavirus screening, is an essential part of ensuring we not only identify cervical cancer, but upwards of 6 different cancers that are associated with HPV. And it is much more sensitive, it is less invasive, and it truly does respond to the healthcare needs of our patients with cervixes.
Now, the fact that the testing is done at home, do you think that will encourage more people to take the tests?
Well, there's 2 tests that we're speaking about. There's HPV testing, and then there's HPV self-sampling. So what we've seen across Canada is different provinces taking different approaches. Last year, Prince Edward Island was the first province in Canada to announce that they would be making the switch to HPV testing. That included a series of clinic-based HPV tests across the island, both in rural communities, urban centers, a combination of Indigenous community as well as sexual health clinics. And within the last couple of months, they've introduced self-sampling, which allows Islanders to have the tests physically in their homes so that they can administer the test themselves. New Brunswick also announced last year, quickly after Prince Edward Island, that they would also be making that switch. And they're taking a phased-in approach where they are starting with clinic-based HPV testing and then moving gradually to self-sampling options, which again is the kits in home. Whereas BC, for example, British Columbia, earlier this year announced the switch to exclusively having self-sampling options. And so there are a variety of tests and methods that are being used across Canada and different approaches. We're very excited to see Nova Scotia join its sister provinces when it comes to offering this testing because it does put screening in the hands of Nova Scotians and it increases access to vital cancer screening tools.
And also the fact that there is a family doctor shortage in this province and in many places, that I assume is also helpful.
This is where there is a huge benefit to the self-sampling option when it's provided. We know that Nova Scotia, like many of the provinces across Canada, are challenged with primary care access. We've heard that our sexual health clinics, our walk-in clinics, and other healthcare providers are being challenged with offering Pap tests to current patients that are unattached. And so having the switch from Pap tests to HPV testing and specifically self-sampling will help alleviate that burden on our primary healthcare system and put more tools directly in the hands of Nova Scotians.
Now, Nova Scotia says it will take at least 2 years to switch over to HPV screening instead of the Pap tests. Is that too long a time in your view?
I believe that Nova Scotia is trying to take a very thoughtful approach to how they are rolling out the HPV testing for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, we have a shortage of the required health human resources to actually process the tests. And so there is an effort underway to build the lab capacity. In addition, when these tools are put in the hands of Nova Scotians, we want to ensure that when they receive a test result that perhaps shows an anomaly, that Nova Scotian gets care right away, because we know that once cancer is identified earlier, the outcomes, not only for the patient, but for the health system improves. And so there needs to be that mechanism in place that when there is an anomaly or a test result that perhaps would indicate or suggest that there is an infection or cervical cancer, that Nova Scotian receives incredibly timely care. And so that is part of the conversation, and that is part of the capacity building for HPV testing. But an immediate step that Nova Scotia could take today is expanding access to vaccinations. When we talk about human papillomavirus, we're also talking about an infection that can be prevented in not only in its spread, but also from someone spreading it, but also from someone receiving the HPV infection. Upwards of 70% of sexually active Canadians will have an HPV infection at some point in their lifetime. We, since 2007, have rolled out a school-based program to have both boys and girls in the school classroom setting vaccinated for HPV. We have been keeping pace with the global framework of 90% vaccinations amongst girls, with our vaccination rates being around 80%. However, there is a barrier, specifically for those who have not been vaccinated or who were not eligible or didn't participate in the program. Not only is there an age barrier, but there's also a financial barrier. And so when we're talking around HPV, when we're talking about preventing cervical cancer and the 5 other cancers that are associated with an HPV infection, a robust approach that must be taken is a combination of vaccination as well as testing.
All right. Well, thank you for walking us through this, Heather. We really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amy.
Coming up, debunking myths about sunscreen in light of trending TikToks advising against using it. Welcome back. Canada is among the NATO allies that are part of a new plan to provide long-term support to Ukraine. More than 2 years into Russia's full-scale invasion, Ukraine's president has been pleading for more help and weapons. Foreign support has been spotty, but as Ashley Burke reports, that could be about to change.
Support to Ukraine is not charity. It is in our own security interest.
After broken promises and delayed support, the head of NATO says it's time for a new pledge to help Ukraine in its fight against Russia.
To ensure that we have some kind of agreed formulas for burden sharing, that we have more transparency, and also that we have more accountability.
More accountability to make sure all allies at this NATO summit deliver, after a long lull in shipments hurt Ukraine.
So, of course, these gaps and these delays in military support to Ukraine, they created a very difficult situation for the Ukrainians on the battlefield.
On the eve of the summit, one of the worst attacks since the beginning of the war. It's reported a Russian missile leveled a children's hospital in the capital.
It's so difficult and to lose children.
As part of a new package to help, the U.S. announced a long-awaited promise.
As we speak, the transfer of F-16 jets is underway.
Supersonic jets from Denmark and the Netherlands to help boost Ukrainian Air Force defense. Canada will also expand its efforts to train Ukrainian pilots.
Those jets will be flying in the skies of Ukraine this summer to make sure that Ukraine can continue to effectively defend itself against the Russian aggression.
The U.S. also committed to new air defense systems for Ukraine, but gave no timeline when the shipments would arrive.
Ukraine can and will stop Putin.
Canada promised one of these systems more than 18 months ago, but it's still being built in the U.S. The government has committed another $500 million to support Ukraine and to boost its own protection in Canada by buying a new fleet of 12 submarines to detect and deter threats, but didn't say how much those submarines would cost or when they would arrive. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
In the war between Israel and Hamas, Palestinian medical officials say at least 29 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike. It hit a camp for displaced people in southern Gaza. Israel's military says it was targeting a Hamas fighter. Tom Perry is tracking the story from London, and a warning to viewers, the images in this story are graphic.
This incident happened in Abbasan, east of Khan Yunis. Palestinian officials say displaced people were living in tents outside a school and they were hit by an airstrike. Witnesses say there was a huge explosion. Bodies were thrown everywhere. A cameraman working for CBC News captured images of the dead and injured arriving at a nearby hospital. It's quite graphic, it's quite grim, but it does give an idea of the scale of this attack. The Israel Defense Force says it used precision munitions to attack a member of Hamas who took part in the group's attack on Israel on October 7th. Israel says it's reviewing reports civilians were harmed and that the incident is now under investigation. This comes after the IDF ordered the mass evacuation of parts of southern Gaza. There's also been reports the IDF has been dropping leaflets ordering people out of Gaza City. So across Gaza, there are tens of thousands of people on the move, seeking shelter, seeking safety. And amid all this, you have the Israeli military launching repeated attacks, it says, to target Hamas. But as always, it's civilians paying the price. This does come as talks toward a ceasefire are resuming in Qatar. Brett McGurk, the White House envoy to the Middle East, met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. The Israeli Prime Minister assured the U.S. envoy he is committed to a peace deal, even as Israel keeps up its strikes within Gaza. There was also word from Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, the militant group that's been lobbing rockets at Israel from Lebanon, who was quoted as saying that if there is a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, that his group would halt its attacks without discussion. But right now, there is no ceasefire and there is no end to the killing. Tom Perry, CBC News, London.
Police in the UK have arrested a suspect in a triple murder near the London suburb of Watford. A woman and two of her daughters were killed in a crossbow attack.
The victims are aged 25, 28 and 61.
Police captured 26-year-old Kyle Clifford in another London suburb about 20 kilometers east of the crime scene. Officials say he was found with injuries and was taken for medical treatment. Clifford is a British military veteran, and police believe the killings were targeted. The victims were all members of the family of a BBC horse racing commentator, John Hunt. Hunt reportedly arrived home in the village of Bushy, about 25 kilometers northwest of London, yesterday evening and found his wife and daughters gravely injured. They died at the scene a short time later. Well, child welfare has been a central topic at the Assembly of First Nations annual meeting this week. CBC News has learned Ottawa is offering $47 billion to reform First Nations child welfare. That's double the amount previously committed. Olivia Stefanovic has the details from Montreal.
A source directly involved in the negotiations tells CBC News the Assembly of First Nations received a new offer from the federal government earlier this week, a proposal to spend $47 billion over the next 10 years to reform the First Nations child welfare system. AFN chiefs had the chance to go over the details behind the closed doors of the Assembly Hall at their summer gathering yesterday in Montreal. The media was not allowed inside to listen in, but we did have a chance to catch up with chiefs afterwards who left with mixed reaction.
We have to be able to analyze things. We have to be able to make sure that we're looking at what the system's looking, what's the effects, what are the things that are going to be looking different, to be able to say this is a good deal, not a good deal. I don't know what the deal is, right?
You know, First Nations children have spent enough time outside of their community, loss of identity. Now is the time to ensure that children who are in care have their culture, they have their language, and they have that accessibility to that.
While some AFN chiefs say they're excited about this new offer, others have concerns. They say they don't have enough information about the proposed deal to support it. The $47 billion offer is double the amount of money that Ottawa initially set aside for First Nations child welfare reform. Ottawa originally put aside $40 billion in total, half to compensate First Nations children and families, the other half for long-term reform, which still needs to be sorted out. First Nations children's advocate Cindy Blackstock has done her own calculations. She says Ottawa's new offer falls $10 billion short. She says it would cost $57 billion over the next 10 years to reform the First Nations child welfare system properly, and she has concerns about how these negotiations are going behind closed doors.
If this is a deal where there is not enough money again to be able to stop this discrimination and prevent it from happening again, then leadership needs to know that when they make their decision. And Canada cannot be blackmailing chiefs by saying, you either take this deal or you get nothing.
First Nations leaders will get a chance to vote on the final deal in September, when the AFN holds a special child welfare assembly in Winnipeg this fall. Until then, negotiations over the draft offer continue. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Montreal.
There are now 9 confirmed cases of listeriosis linked to a Canada-wide recall of some plant-based beverages. All 9 are in Ontario, and 5 of the people have been hospitalized. On Monday, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency recalled certain Silk and Great Value brands of oat, almond milk, and coconut refrigerated beverages because they may be contaminated with Listeria. The bacteria can cause a rare but serious illness. Symptoms may start suddenly and include vomiting, nausea, cramps, severe headache, constipation, or fever. More severe illness, which can take as long as 70 days to appear, may lead to the brain infection, meningitis, and blood infection in newborns and older adults. Foods contaminated with Listeria do not necessarily look, smell, or taste bad. Consumers who have the recalled products should immediately discard or return them. Misleading information about sunscreen is all over TikTok these days, telling people to stop using it or they'll get cancer. Some posts have racked up close to 1 million views. But as Tashana Reed shows us, these claims contradict decades of scientific evidence.
to stabilize it and make it
It's a trending topic. Online influencers taking aim at sunscreen.
Sunscreen is a scam, and here's why.
I never wear sunscreen.
These are actually more dangerous than you burning.
Mainstream sunscreens. Making claims to hundreds of thousands of viewers, it does more harm than good.
These sunscreens that are on the market today are mostly toxic, and we know that they can actually cause cancer.
But get the sun, don't get the sunscreen.
This dermatologist says that couldn't be further from the truth.
Sunscreen is one of the #1 things that helps us prevent cancer. So the thing that causes cancer, particularly skin cancer, is the sun.
Sunscreen protects skin from the sun's ultraviolet radiation. There are 2 types of products, mineral and chemical, and both work in different ways to block harmful rays from being absorbed in our skin.
But you look at the whole breadth of the data that's available, and on the whole, it shows that all these chemicals are safe, which is why they're Health Canada approved.
Quebec's Order of Chemists even released a statement saying the misinformation circulating online could endanger public health, adding these influencers generally don't have the scientific expertise to assess chemical safety.
The people who are talking to you, who are they? What's their credential? Where did they get this information from?
Is there proof?
And now a counter movement, including medical experts, are debunking these myths online.
There is no evidence showing that sunscreen ages you.
Still, at this Toronto beach, sunscreen isn't a priority for everyone.
Don't feel the need for it, especially with the chemicals that are in sunscreens.
Most days I don't put any at all.
Well, what you really want to do is protect yourself against the carcinogen that's coming from the sun's rays.
About 65% of melanoma cases, the deadliest form of skin cancer, are caused by UV radiation, but it is preventable, say experts.
Even one blistering burn as a child or a young adult doubles your risk of melanoma.
To avoid the risks, experts say use a sunscreen of SPF 30 or higher year-round, that adults apply 2 to 3 tablespoons every 2 hours, and to only take medical advice from trusted professionals. Tashana Reid, CBC News, Toronto.
Canada's men's soccer team recorded a loss in the biggest game in the history of the squad, but there isn't a lot of disappointment. They lost 2-0 to Argentina, one of the best teams in the world, led by one of the best players in the game. And as Katie Nicholson tells us, the fans and the team are looking ahead to the World Cup and even greater success.
The Copa America signage has all but disappeared from the stadium, replaced with World Cup promotional materials. Of course, all eyes now looking into the future. For Canadian fans, that means that game on Saturday in Charlotte. That's where they're going to play the loser of the Colombia-Uruguay match and vie for 3rd place in this Copa America tournament. The fans leaving here last night, surprisingly chipper considering their team had lost, but just pleased with this moment in Canadian men's soccer history and where the team is now positioned.
Just being here was a big win. It's amazing that they made it this far. It's just so exciting to come down and watch them play, and they look like they belong with the best team in the world.
Canada's a player in the big leagues, you know, that they're world-class players.
The Canadians did really, really well, so we're really proud of them.
There's a lot of potential, a lot of hope for the future, so I really feel like as though there is
World Cup in 2 years, right?
Exactly, World Cup in 2 years. We're so excited. We're going to be here.
So the big question is, what is the team going to do now moving forward to position itself to play better in the World Cup? Jesse Marsh, head coach, had some thoughts today. A lot of this is about really building up the bench, deepening it, making sure that there is a stronger roster of players so that they can actually cycle through players through a tournament like this where you have a number of injuries, where heat exhaustion comes into play, and just building on that really highly successful form of play that they have now adopted.
We've had a wonderful 5 weeks together, 6 weeks together, and it's gone way better than any of us could have scripted. So there's still a lot of work to do, but we've built a really good foundation, and I'm really optimistic about what the future can look like.
A couple of the players also talked about what happened last night. They talked about that moment when they started to feel the game fall apart. It's those insights that will help guide them forward into that World Cup as the team starts to regroup, get ready for the game on Saturday, and then look to the big stage, the World Cup in 2 years. Some of those games, of course, being played on their home turf in Canada. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, East Rutherford, New Jersey.
All right, you were talking about those scattered showers yesterday and day
Yeah.
before, and you've been keeping an eye on things.
That's right, and there have been a few scattered showers, not as much as what we saw yesterday, and certainly not the big downpours that we saw yesterday with these showers as well, but they are going on right now. And the radar is getting a little bit of a break, I think, because it's going to be quite active, especially across Nova Scotia over the course of the next 24 hours. It was fairly dry for the better part of the day today, and then again, we did see some scattered showers, particularly in Guysborough County, popping up with the heat of the day. Now the sun's starting to get a little bit lower in the sky, and the heat of the day is now over. We're starting to see those temperatures falling slightly. So I don't think there's going to be any more of those afternoon pop-up showers, but replacing that is an area of low pressure that is coming in from the west. But the main energy of the system is going to sink in from north to south, if that makes any sense, as the movement of the system pushes its way through. There are lots of opportunities for rain. We are looking at some pretty significant potential with some rain as the system pushes its way through. Take a look. The heaviest of rain is now forecasted for parts of New Brunswick, but here's how, as we go through the day on Thursday. Scattered showers are possible, but the heavy rain, I think, is going to hold off until tomorrow night into the early morning hours on Friday, and then we'll start to see things quiet down, at least temporarily, but the rain showers are going to stay in and out of the weekend forecast. And when I'm talking about significant rain, we could see anywhere from 10 to 20 millimeters on average, and there are thunderstorms in the forecast as well, so there could be some more enhanced areas of rain. Tomorrow, because of the cloud cover and the rain showers that will be coming in, I think the temperatures are going to hold in the mid-20s rather than those upper 20s to lower 30s. And again, the rain will be pushing in the heaviest of rain for tomorrow night. But between, say, tomorrow morning and tomorrow night, there still are chances for showers. But again, the heaviest of rain will be late in the afternoon and overnight Thursday night into Friday morning. And again, it's not a complete washout for the weekend, but there are showers in the forecast.
All right. It wouldn't be a weekend without a little rain, right?
Of course, it's a weekend.
Well, a caution to viewers about this next story. The awe factor, it's high. Two golden retrievers, Bree and Bond, tied the knot in front of their closest human and canine friends. The pet wedding trend in China is being driven by popularity of dogs and cats and an increasing willingness to splurge on them. Spending on furry pals there rose to over $50 billion last year.
Yeah, no word on the honeymoon plans, but given that they're Goldens, a lakeside getaway seems to be a good bet.
That certainly does. Oh. All right, that is it for us tonight. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.